Hey, everybody, welcome into the Tuesday Morning Volquest podcast presented by our great friends over at Exterior Home Solution. They've been East Tennessee's local and trusted source since 1999 for roofing, siding, windows, garage, whatever the case may be. You can get a free estimate by dialing the phone number 865-524-5888 or visiting them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. I'm Eric Kane alongside Grant Ramey, Austin Price, and Brent Hubbs. And got a lot to discuss here today. We'll talk hoops, shortcoming at number one Auburn in the back half of the show, but of course a massive basketball game at the Food City Center coming up tonight against Kentucky. We'll talk a little Tennessee in the transfer portal, reset that conversation. Tim Banks got a new deal. We knew that already, but the financials have been publicized. We'll talk about that. But I do want to start with, it was yesterday, 4 years ago yesterday, Tennessee hired Josh Heupel to be the next head coach at Tennessee. It's gone pretty well, Brent Hubbs, if we do say so ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, when he was hired, a lot of people thought, here's Danny White just circling back around, bringing his friends to town or whatever. And it was not great, met with great euphoria of everybody just clamoring that, they went out and broke the bank and got the guy or whatever. But when you look at where they're at 4 years later, I know there's gnashing of the teeth right now about the offense and the way that they finished in the playoff game. But to be sitting here with 2 10-win seasons and to do what they have done, Grant, considering where they came from, it's been a pretty good first 4 years for Josh Heupel. Now, there's work to be done, but to get this program from where it was the day he arrived to where it is right now has been certainly an impressive showing for Josh Heupel and his staff.
I mean, it's just nice to be relevant, honestly, because I graduated from UT in 2010. I started in this business around UT in 2012, the last year of the Dooley era, and between 2012 and the time Heupel got here, how many years, games, whatever, was Tennessee really relevant on the national level in football? There weren't very many of them. 2016 for the first half of the season. 2015 for parts of the season. That was about it. So just the change of pace. Like when the Heupel stuff was reported when he was hired, I didn't really know what to think. I was just kind of wait and see mode because Tennessee had struck out so many times before. But what he's done, just the numbers alone and the 10-win seasons and the playoff appearance and, the Orange Bowl, stuff like that, beyond anything I could have imagined the night he was hired.
Thanks a lot, Grant. You just put me in midlife crisis mode, telling me that you didn't start covering the Vols until 2012. I'm better than you by a decade, and that's just sad because I don't feel that much older than you. It's the only 4-year term that caused inflation on ticket prices that you get a second 4-year term. I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, this is been a fantastic turnaround. Now, don't get me wrong; they've got to figure out, the ability to win on the road. They've got to, do little things here and there in the program, but to know where they were, and Butch had a few flashes here and there, but where they were under Dooley, where they were under Jeremy, and to be kind of left with nothing. You talking about just a cupboard that there was like a nice cup, and when they pulled opened the door to the cabinet, and there was maybe a nice bowl, but like it wasn't like the fine china was all just like perfect for Josh. He was left with little to nothing, and really, you go back. I think 2021 was the fire starter for this thing. It wasn't 2022. It was 2021 where Tennessee was competitive against Ole Miss at home. Won 7 games. Easily could have won 8. Had the game against Purdue in the Music City Bowl went their way, and I think that people were like, "Wow, they took that kind of ragtag group and won 7 games after struggling the last several years. Wow, that's pretty impressive." And then who saw 2022 coming? But I think it really goes back to 2021.
You immediately had an identity. I mean, you were gonna go fast, tempo. You were gonna utilize your playmakers. Cedric Tillman became one of the better wide receivers in the conference. Hendon Hooker emerged, of course. You ran the football very, very well with not a whole lot of talent, at least proven talent at that point in time. So you immediately had an ID and an MO on offense. And then slowly but surely over the years, I know what was not good in 2021, but over the years, the defense has come along. It's taken a little while, but you took a small step from 21 to 22. You took a step from 22 to 23, and then you took a huge step from 23 to 24. knowing you've always been an aggressive defense with 100 TFLs 3 of those 4 years. The sack numbers outside of this year has been pretty decent, but the defense overall has kind of come along. If you're watching on YouTube, you look at the graphic up here that we're showing. I mean, that winning percentage, 769. That's the last 3 seasons, top 10 in the country, third in the SEC. 30 winningest 30 wins, the winningest 3-year stretch at UT since 1998 to 2000. 3 SEC Players of the Year, 5 All-Americans, 10 wins over ranked teams, 14 All-Conference honors. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's been a very successful stretch here. But kind of going back to what you were saying, Austin, like we can reference where Tennessee was when he took over the job and how much progress he has, and that's great because I think it's important to remember where context is, but also, you got to continue climbing and get over that hump. I thought Tennessee took another step this year. You got to the college football playoffs. You're on that platform. And now, Grant, it's, what can you do with that? You need to be competitive in those games. You need to win on the road. You need to go to the second, third round of the college football playoffs. You got to continue to climb.
You got to host a playoff game, I think. Is that the next logical step? Host a playoff game and take care of business. I mean,
or
we
win
saw
the conference and have a bye. Yeah,
right. Well, I mean, that seems like a much tougher task than just getting a home game in the first round. But I mean, yeah, it's the amount of ground he's covered in 4 years is pretty incredible. Now you can also say at the same time there are steps to be taken where they have to get to the next level. I mean, that's obvious, and that's what you would expect at this program because those are the expectations. They've taken a lot of steps to get back to where those expectations should be. Now it's the next step. It's hosting a playoff game. It's like Eric said. It's advancing. It's not just happy to be here. It's what's next, which is I don't know. I guess hosting a playoff game.
I mean,
well, there's 2 things for me. Sorry, Paige. Two things that I think you have to put in context with all this is, I mean, he's beaten Alabama twice.
Yep.
In 4 years. Okay, so and we all agree that there's steps to be made, but when you beat Alabama twice and you beat Florida twice in 4 years, when you think about the issues this program has had for the last 30 years with those 2 teams at different points in time, those 2 count. Those are 2 wins that count. And I know people will say, well, Florida's been down. Well, hey, they were down. There were stretches where they were down and Tennessee still couldn't find a way to win that game. And same thing with Alabama. There were times Tennessee was knocking on the door and they couldn't find a way. So to win those 2 games in particularly to break the streak against Alabama, I think elevates kind of what Josh Heupel has also done in 4 years. I think the other thing that you learn too, AP, is it's a quarterback-driven game, right? And how much of this was sped up because of what they found with the quarterback in Hendon Hooker. I mean, I think that I'm not saying that they'll never have another quarterback like that because I don't believe that. I believe they will. But the fact that they found someone that was a perfect fit for him and for them in this system really jump-started that thing middle of the year in 21 through the 22 season that really catapulted this thing into a stratosphere in such a short period of time.
Oh, I agree. I mean, it is a quarterback-driven game. I mean, look at the NFL. I mean, that's just facts. And, I mean, college game is more like the NFL game now than it's ever been. And, you can't just roll out just an awesome defense and a great running game and win. And, I mean, the problem is for, like, even a guy like Nico, he's compared to Hendon. And that's not quite fair. Hendon was 23, 24 years old. Nico's 19. And, even if you say he's an older redshirt freshman, he would be 20. I mean, that's still 3 to 4 years difference. I mean, my kid who's a 6th grader looks a lot different than when she was a 5th grader. And I'm sure she'll look a lot different next year. Can you imagine if you're like an elite athlete, like, how much you're going to grow? And so, Hendon was absolutely the fire starter for this thing. And we'll see if Nico, and I think Nico for Tennessee to take the next step, Nico's got to make the big jump, this coming fall. But, this is, I think the most important thing is to remember where you came from, I mean, like, where were you, as Grant said, when he started covering this thing? And it was in shambles, for many, many years. And now you're at the point where you're competitive, you're beating your rivals. And that's a huge deal. Like, but here's the deal. To do what Grant was talking about, host a home playoff game, get back to the CFP, all those things. In my opinion, and Hubs, you and I have talked about this, you're going to have to do something next year that you've either not done in 20 years, which is win it in Gainesville or Tuscaloosa, or beat Georgia, which is something you've not done under Josh Heupel.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, everybody out there, I mean, with the exception of probably Ryan Day right now because they just won the title. Everybody out there is saying you got to take another step. If you're not standing on top of the mountain at the end of the year, you got to say you got to take another step, right? Oregon's sitting there talking about the next step they've got to take. I mean, you're either getting better or you're getting worse, and I think that's the case for everybody. But what Josh Heupel's done in 4 years, Eric, is he's given Tennessee fans and put them in a position where when you're talking about getting better and next step, you're talking about playing for the national title. You're talking about advancing in the playoffs. You're not talking about getting bowl eligible. You're not talking about, man, it'd be nice to play in a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, you're talking about being, in the middle of everything from a national scene, and that's a credit to Josh Heupel and his staff. Now, you don't want the last 4 years to be a high watermark and all that kind of stuff, but where he's taken them to, as Grant said, is and the main thing is relevancy. It's fun, it's entertaining, and you're relevant. You're on the national scene. You're talked about. That was not the case 4 years ago.
Let's do Mount Rushmore style as we transition out of this topic. I didn't want to say one win because we'd all have the same answer, but let's go around the room. We'll do Mount Rushmore, 4 biggest wins Josh Heupel's had so far at Tennessee. Hubs, you can start.
Well, I mean, you're going to pick the Florida game and the Alabama game both in 22.
You got to pick one. Got to pick one.
Oh, I'm only picking one? Well, everybody's going to pick Alabama 22.
No. We you can only pick it. Then it's off the table. Then we got to go down the list.
I stole it. Well, I'm going to take 22. I'm sorry. I totally misunderstood the question.
22 Alabama or 22 Florida?
22 Alabama.
All right, Grant.
No, AP, go ahead. You had one. Go ahead.
I'll take 24 Alabama. I mean, like, anytime you can continue the trend against the Tide, at least holding the serve at home, it's pretty big.
I'm going to take the fan favorite, the one that gets mentioned nonstop, 22 LSU.
Yeah. And then there's 2 more out there. I mean, I'm going to take the 22 Florida because, again, it's low-hanging fruit.
Keep going. Go around the room again.
You snap the streak and all that.
You only get 4 at Mount Rushmore.
If we had an honorable mention, okay, I think, and I understand, bowl games aren't what they were, but I think from a perception standpoint,
I agree.
That Orange Bowl win was just huge for Tennessee. You're coming off your best season in a decade and a half.
You're not playing with Hendon.
Yeah, you don't have Hendon. You have Joe. You're propelling yourself into the next year. Joe Milton has a great game. Squirrel White has a great game. Aaron Beasley defensively, Tennessee has a great game. I thought that win was huge as well. So I'd have that as an honorable mention. All right, so 4 years been pretty good with Josh Heupel. We'll see if the 5th year can be his best yet. Before we get into hoops talk, I do want to transition a little bit into the transfer portal. Austin Price, Tennessee, of course, made an addition on Friday after an official visit on Thursday to the offensive line. 4 commits now from the transfer portal. And where does Tennessee kind of stand now with that window closing from the last 2 teams who have played the national championship game, of course, that being Ohio State and Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think Tennessee's done until the spring, and we'll see if they add a receiver. I would be shocked if they don't. I just think it would be a mistake to go into the season with just 7 scholarship receivers, 4 of which have not played, 2 of which have played very little, and 1, Chris Brazzell. So I think, you're looking at adding at least a receiver in the spring. You're able to pick up a tailback in this cycle. You added to the offensive line a couple times, then get Amari Jefferson, who, again, is coming off a hip surgery, will be limited in spring, at least early on. And we'll see if he can get back cleared and be able to practice in full at some point this spring. Again, there's a difference between being cleared to do things and cleared for football. I think the addition of Kevin Pendleton, or not Kevin Pendleton, but Sam Pendleton, Kevin Pendleton's the coach. The addition of Sam Pendleton, was a really nice get late in the process. A kid you knew from recruiting. So I think anytime you can walk in the door with somebody you have a previous relationship, Hubs, it kind of jump starts things a little quicker than somebody who comes in just having been here for a 13-hour transfer portal visit and doesn't really know anybody.
Yeah, I think that's someone who's comfortable with Tennessee. He's comfortable with the Tennessee coaching staff, and obviously a smart guy. I mean, he's here. He's getting to work immediately. So, I don't think there's any doubt that those are the type moves. I mean, it helps when you have a previous relationship because you know exactly what you're getting. I think what's going to be fascinating with those guys is, on offense, because you didn't go get anybody of experience in the portal, you were mandatory young in spring, right? So you're not coaching a blend of older guys and younger guys. You're coaching a bunch of younger guys. So you probably handled this spring differently than you would if you had a little bit of a hybrid deal. Okay. So maybe it gets more simplified here in February and March to start to build and develop there. Then on the flip side of this thing, on the offensive line, if we think a guy like David Sanders, who I believe, certainly should be very much in the mix to start. I'm not going to guarantee him as a starter, but you've invested a lot in him to be the starter. And as I've called him a first-round draft pick, he's got to go fast because around him suddenly now might be veteran players, particularly if Andre Carrick were to come back. Now you're looking at, returning player at tackle and a returning player at guard and Pendleton, if he's in there at center, possibly as a guy who's played at this level and started at this level. And then you got Moy who started. So David Sanders has got to ramp up in a hurry and get caught up with a group that's got some experience. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how kind of they manage everything and how the development goes at those two positions, because they may be similar or they may be different depending on what that looks like in terms of the amount of youth out there.
Well, you know how this works out. It was like, there was multiple of those young linemen that were like, okay, these older guys are gone. It's our turn. And then they show back up and they go, who's this guy? Who's this guy?
welcome to the portal. I mean, welcome to the portal. So
I've got a Sam Pendleton question. Have we talked to the equipment staff about this single bar face mask that he wears?
Best thing about him, he's going to be a legend. He might not play a lot, or he might not be an all-conference player, but he's going to be a Tennessee legend because of that vertical crossbar.
First bar down the middle of a face mask since when?
Oh.
That's a trivia question.
I mean, who wears? Answer. Nobody wears those anymore.
Frage. Frage has got to remember one.
I wore one between like third and fourth grade, and it was the big, thick plastic, those old face masks from the mid '90s.
They got to go find one of those first. We'll see if he changes it up when he gets here.
That's a special order deal.
I didn't even know that was still legal. I mean, again, nobody wears them anymore. So good for him. Hubs kind of went into it, AP, but give me a scenario along with Andre Carrick if he wins his appeal that Pendleton or Moy would play center instead of a William Satterwhite or somebody else that's on roster right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously if Andre were to somehow be back, then I think you're probably looking at Pendleton at center and then Andre and Wendell Moy, flanking him at guards, and then Hurd at left tackle. And, Hubs ain't going to do it. I am. David Sanders will be your right tackle. They ain't going to name him out of spring because they want everybody to continue to compete, but they ain't putting that kind of money into that kid and having him sit over on the sidelines.
So of the two newcomers, it would be Pendleton that would slide down if one of them slid
I
down.
think so, just because he's got a probably a little bit more of a proven track record at center.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know that Andre could play center.
He might could, yeah.
I mean, he does know the offense better. Again, he's got to win an appeal first. He may not win the appeal. So he's in school, finishing up school. Obviously, is trying to. But I mean, I don't think the first couple of reviews of his case with the NCAA has gone his way, which is why we're still in the waiting game here. So I don't know that he's going to win it. If he doesn't win it, then I think Pendleton stays at guard, and then it goes back to Eric's scenario, Austin, with probably Satterwhite or Max Anderson or Jesse Perry or somebody at center, unless they feel like Sam's their best option in the spring, and then they go with Jesse Perry at guard. I mean, there's some flexibility there potentially, depending on what it looks like in spring practice.
Yeah, and for Pendleton, I mean, this is someone who, was a guard, started out as a tackle when he first got to Notre Dame. And then they came to him last spring, and he played center all last spring at Notre Dame, and even then the fall camp. And then, technically won the job at guard. So, I mean, again, as a guy who intelligence-wise, as Hubs pointed out, will be able to handle it, and then does have, some work there at center.
So he was essentially like an Addison Nichols situation, but he won a job and played the first little bit of the season?
Yes, but all during practice last spring, he played nothing but center.
All right. Before we get into hoops, I do want to comment real quick the financials of the Tim Banks deal: 3 years, $2.1 million in terms of annual salary. Jim Knowles, Ohio State defensive coordinator, going to Happy Valley, going to Penn State. I mean, I think we can all agree he's a very good coach, but he's going at what, 3 years, $3.1 million.
Yep.
Which just feels just asinine for an assistant coach. What are your thoughts on that? And then you compare it to what Tim Banks is making, given his track record, and of course, his breakout 24 season for Tennessee's defense.
Well, I mean, listen. Why would you want to be a head coach, Grant? Why would you want this? Why would you want the challenges of being a head coach? I mean, so what's Chip Kelly getting ready to make if he stays at Ohio State? He's got a couple of NFL suitors after him. Now the Seahawks have filled their spot, so that one's off the table. But he might have an opportunity to interview for another NFL job. So he's either going to go to the NFL or he's going to come back and go from 2.3 to whatever he's going to make at Ohio State after winning that one. I mean, if you're getting coordinators that are in the $2 to $3 million range and they've never been a head coach before, why would they ever become a head coach? Where are you going to land that job, Grant, as a first-time head coach? I mean, I just stay in the coordinator world and make a whole bunch of money with a lot less stress.
I think you have to give some respect to Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's the first guy that's ever said kind of out loud, like, I'd just rather be a coordinator. Like, he had the head coaching time and experience and all that stuff. He dealt with it. And now he's having success as a coordinator. And he's just like, you know what? I'll just stay here and do this. And the numbers, the numbers are always crazy. It was crazy when Saban got $4 million from Alabama way back in the day to be a head coach. And now you're talking about coordinators getting 3.1, and it's only going to go up from here. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's pride, maybe it's just being, wanting to be a head coach and having that title, having that label, all that stuff, and winning games and legacy and all that stuff. But for 3.1 million, I would be fine with the head coach having to deal with all the head coach's problems and me just worry about my defense or worry about my offense and go from there.
It's exactly why, like Josh Heupel, I could totally see him doing that, go that route. I mean, he's going to have made $9 million for however many seasons a year. And then at the end of the day, we all know he just wants to call ball plays. So, it wouldn't shock me at all if, sometime down the line, if he just says, this whole NIL transfer portal craziness just isn't worth it, I'm just going to go call ball plays.
Let's just go ahead and get ahead of the thread on the board that's going to come from that comment saying, do you think he's really going to go become an offensive coordinator somewhere? How worried should we be?
I heard he's going back to Oklahoma to do it.
Oh, boy.
What's fast, and again, some guys just want to be a head coach, right? Alex Golis was going to take a job because he wanted to be in charge, and he wanted to be in charge. And some people are just that way, right? I think Tim Banks is making about $300,000, maybe $400,000 less a year than what Golis is making to be the head coach at South Florida. And when we talk about, the example I'm using is just from the standpoint of when you talk about separating in college football, these are further things, not just the NIL money, but these are the further things that separate and are going to have the two power conferences or the power teams or whatever just break away, because there's just, how are you supposed to compete with that, right? Like, how is Boise supposed to pay that kind of money? Not to mention Tulane or some SMU. Maybe SMU can get there financially, but I just think you're going to see a breakaway from some of these things because there's just no stopping the money, it feels like. I mean, I don't know where Penn State's getting all the money from. I mean, good for them. But I mean, like, they're paying James Franklin about $10 million a year, and now they're going to have, $5-6 million invested in their two coordinators. I mean, it seems like there's no stop to it at this point.
Well, it's like a stop. And now that they changed that rule, Brent, where you can have as many on the field coaches as you want, there's no stopping them from stockpiling a bunch of assistant coaches. If your school's willing to put that kind of money into to your staff, there's nothing stopping you from having two wide receivers coaches that make $800,000 a year versus just one.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I keep acting and keep telling everybody it's not monopoly money, but every time I say that, something comes out, it makes it look like it's just monopoly money, or everybody's got more money than I think that they have. And listen, hats off to Jim Knowles, right? Good for you, man. Go get it at this point, and with where you are, and anybody that can get that, I don't hate on anybody going out and making a lot of money, but there's a lot a lot of money being spent right now.
You think at some point Penn State's going to have to turn over Boardwalk and Park Place and mortgage it and get rid of the hotels and all that stuff?
I mean,
Actually, there's not a hotel in that city, as I learned from college football playoff travel plans.
Yeah, I don't know, Grant. I mean, I think it's, is there a threshold? We keep thinking that there's going to be, but it doesn't feel like there's one. It hasn't been found yet. So, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean,
college teams are going to have to find a way to be the Los Angeles Dodgers and just defer money until 2047.
Yeah, but I mean, you're sitting here, and I mean, everybody's spending money in different places, and Tennessee had some of it already on the documents. But I mean, they got $85 million in expansion to the Anderson Training Center, and they're going to have $125 million in Lindsey Nelson Stadium, and they're going to have $400 million in the south end of Neyland Stadium, and they're going to sink another, I don't know, $5 to $10 million probably in Food City Center this off season. So I mean, just keep spending it, baby.
Heartbreaker for Tennessee on the Plains, but you got to have a short-term memory. You got to turn it around because you're playing Kentucky at home at the Food City Center coming up tonight. How does Tennessee respond? All that and more as we continue here on the Tuesday morning Volquest podcast. But first, let's get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Hey, Sterling, man, come on. We got a roof to replace.
Let's go, baby.
Let's
go.
Hey, Sterl, you ready to go to the top?
Man, I can't believe you guys been doing this for 25 years. Oh, baby.
Now, this is what I call a rooftop party.
We have 25 years experience in roofing and exterior renovations, and we're backed by the best.
Are you ready to get your rooftop party started? Give us a call, 865-524-5888.
East Tennessee's #1 choice for roofing, siding, windows, garage. Contact Exterior Home Solutions today. That phone number for a free estimate is 865-524-5888 or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that are easy to eat as well. They're dietitian approved, ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel up, feel right, no matter what life throws your way. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfected for any active, busy lifestyle. You can lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals based on randomized, controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto. Results will vary depending on diet and exercise. Over 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week. It's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Smart, or Keto. Reach your goals this year with ingredients that you can trust at the convenience that can't be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/VQ50off. Use promo code VQ50OFF. VQ50 offer 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code VQ50off at factormeals.com/VQ50off for 50% off free shipping on your first box. All right, Grant Ramey, it was a heartbreaker at Auburn a couple nights ago. Tennessee falls 53-51 to the Auburn Tigers. A game that Tennessee got the lead and had a lead there towards the end, the last minute to 90 seconds or so. Some questionable officiating calls, but nonetheless, Tennessee had a clean look. Tennessee had a good look at the corner three there with about 9 seconds left. Missed it, and that's all she wrote there. Tennessee came up just short at the buzzer.
Yeah, just overall, extremely impressed. That is a really, really tough place to play. It's always a tough opponent to go down there and face. Bruce Pearl and the way his teams play. I thought going into it, Auburn's the best team in the country, head and shoulders above. I think they're 11-1 in quad one games. Just crazy numbers. They're really good. They're best offense in college basketball. They're really good defensively as well. So for Tennessee to go down there on the road and to slow it down and to make Auburn play at their pace, I thought that was maybe the best 40 minutes of basketball that we've seen in the Rick Barnes era. And obviously they've been a top 5 nationally ranked defense the last 4 or 5 years. So they've been built on elite defense, but that was probably the best defense I've seen start to finish. And just the way they kind of, they started 0 for 14 from the three-point line again, the second time on the road in the SEC they've done that. That's crazy. And for them to stick around and to hit some shots in the second half, to take the lead, to not, get buried under when you're not making shots. That's huge. I came away way more. I know the final 2 minutes was brutal, and that's a tough loss, but you got to walk away a lot more impressed by this basketball team because that is a really tough place to play and a tough opponent to face.
I agree with you. It was Tennessee dictating how the game was going to be played.
Right.
And Tennessee didn't win, but I mean, you had what are they averaging offensively? How many points? I mean, they were 30 points off, weren't they, Grant?
Yes.
And it's just, I mean, you go week over week. You look at Vanderbilt. It was a lot of missed details. It was a lot of missed assignments. It was a lot of scouting. It was just not executed. It was a bad look at Vanderbilt. I know it was a 1-point loss, and they got back in that game, but just the way it unfolded, first half and second half, that was a bad look. And to go to Auburn a week later and to play as well as they did, and to kind of drag Auburn down into the mud, it kind of makes you feel like they could go anywhere and play with anybody, and they could beat anybody. If they get Auburn at home, that's probably a win because of the way college basketball is, how difficult it is to win on the road. So to go there and to play it as a 2-point game and to have a 4-point lead with 2 minutes left, you do need to find a way to close that. But it's just going to be really encouraging for this team. I mean, they played 6-7 guys at most. Darlin Stone Dubar played a minute. Bishop Boswell played a minute. Like, they're not a deep basketball team, but they're hanging with people and they're playing really good basketball in stretches. They just got to be better on the road. They got to find a way to hit shots on the road. They can't start 0 for 14 from the 3-point line. They just got to shoot better. Chaz has got to do a better job getting separation, getting space, and doing something with it. Igor's got to see some shots go in, stuff like that. But what they did on the road, it makes you feel like they could beat anybody on a neutral site for sure.
Grant, I mean, it feels to me like they've got to find ways, particularly on the road early, to get the ball in the paint and create offense inside out on the road. At home, you're comfortable with your rims, you're comfortable with your surroundings. I mean, you got a better shot, a better chance of getting off to a fast start at home from the perimeter shooting the basketball than you do on the road. Even though you have a shoot around or whatever, it's not the same thing. I mean, I would like to see them inside out more early, a little more Ziegler penetration early in the game to get the offense moving. They got into some decent offense in the second half when he started probing and working the paint a little bit. I didn't think there was a whole lot of that. Ironic, that picture there, if you're looking on YouTube, there's 2 guys laying on the ground in the back because it was battle ball for 40 minutes. But don't you think they've got to play inside a little bit more, inside out a little bit more early on the road?
They do. I think Rick Barnes said that Saturday night. They're asking about the kind of the offensive inconsistency in some of these road games. He says the front line has to be better, has to give them more. I think that could be more lobs to Felix, more lobs to Cade Phillips. Igor's got to be able to do something to score it. If that's playing inside out, that would probably be better for him because he needs to see some shots go in. I mean, Zakai drove with, I think it was 1:44 left in the first half Saturday night and hit a free throw line jumper. That was the first jump shot Tennessee had made from the field in the first half because everything else was layups or lobs or whatever. That was the first jump shot. And then he came down the very next possession and did it again. So even if it's just that, just Zakai getting to the paint and finding a way to make a jump or make a float or whatever, you got to do some of that because Chaz right now is adjusting to the level of physicality in this league, especially on the road. He's been much better at home. Obviously, that makes sense. But some of these guys, and Igor too, like these guys, if it's not going to happen on the outside, then you're going to have to go to the front court and find a way to make something happen because you just can't have a 20-point first half and expect things to go well. You just have to find a way to score it. I don't know if Felix is a guy you dump it down to and just let him back somebody down and try to go score it. I don't know if that's his offensive skill set or his strength, but you got to find something to do more with it in the paint.
Grant, do you like the second to last possession, Igor going to the basket? I know Rick Barnes has asked about that, and he said he had no issue with it.
I mean, he had an open run at it. He had a good path to the rim. It was just good defense at the rim, and they weren't really going to call anything right there. I mean, I didn't hate it myself. Obviously, if it doesn't end well, then people are going to pick it apart. But I had no problem with Igor. I had no problem with the look that Zakai got in the corner was a good look. It's what they wanted out of the timeout. You shoot it pretty early in that possession, as early as you can. You hope you get an offensive rebound and a second look at it. But it looked like a good shot. It looked like it was almost going in from where I was sitting. We couldn't hardly see anything, but it was on the other end of the floor, but it looked good. But, those shots go in, they don't go in. It goes in for Auburn, 30 seconds left, Tennessee misses. That's just basketball.
Yeah, I mean, and Auburn's look that it goes in comes off of a block shot, that
was a Janai Broom hockey assist to himself. Looked like he passed it to himself and then passed it to the corner.
Right, that they miraculously saved. I mean, and that's the game of basketball. It just is. But they've got to find Austin. They've got to find something in that 7 to 15 foot range offensively. I mean, that from the elbow extended, whatever. I mean, that's where to me, that's where Lanier's got to get going. They got to get Igor into some of that stuff there, and not so much stand around the 3-point line, hoping to get on track that way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know why Igor's not filling it up from right there at the elbow. Like you shoot it well. You don't have to sit out there. I mean, it's like he feels like he has to either shoot it from point blank or shoot it from 23 feet. And I don't think you have to do that. I think this team probably is built a little bit more like what Hubs is talking. I mean, Meshack, way more comfortable from 17 feet than he is 23 feet. Same thing with several of those players. And, I don't disagree. I do think starting in and working your way out would be a smart move, especially on the road. Maybe not at home, but on the road. I like that approach much more because, you just kind of see where things go. And again, I mean, you went down there, nobody gave them a chance. I sure didn't. I thought that they were walking into a hornet's nest, and they battled, and now they got to go take care of the games at home. Got to win the one tonight. Got to win the one Saturday. You win those two after just having lost to Auburn by 2 on the road, and you feel really good about where this basketball team is as we turn the calendar to February.
Grant, you look at the last couple of weeks, obviously the 30-point loss to Florida, then you come back, you lose at Vanderbilt by 1 point. You got a loss to Auburn on Saturday. I know the SEC is very challenging, but it doesn't get any easier. You've got a stretch of Kentucky tonight at home, Florida at home on Saturday, Kentucky again a couple weeks after that, so on and so forth. What does Tennessee need to do to bounce back? And give us a quick little rundown of Kentucky, who also lost to the Commodores on Saturday.
They got to win. You got to win basketball games. You got to win at home, man. You better hold court. You better be perfect at home because it feels like a home loss is 2 losses compared to just how difficult it is on the road. Go ahead, AP.
Okay, so they got a 3-game home. I didn't know where the Missouri game was. Okay, so they got stretch here.
They got 3 straight home games, and then they got 4 out of 5 on the road after that.
Because Missouri there would be a really tough game. Missouri beat them here a couple years ago, but I mean, that's a tougher game. They're a much improved basketball team.
They're going to Oklahoma. They're going to find a way to win that game. They're going to Kentucky. They've won there in the past. We'll see what happens. You never know at Rupp. They go to A&M. That's been a really tough place to play for them. They got to go to LSU and find a way to win because that's a team that you can beat. And then Ole Miss at the end of the year is kind of hard to figure out what Ole Miss is at this point. They beat Alabama on the road, and then they turned around and lost 3 straight. So, and that's the last week of the regular season when the intensity kind of ratchets up a little bit. But you gotta find a way to beat Kentucky at home. You got to find a way to beat Florida at home Saturday. You just got to hold court at home. You got to hit shots. You got to, play the defense that we've seen from Tennessee that they're capable of playing, the offense that they've shown they're capable of at home when you are hitting shots and before you go on that stretch of 4 or 5 on the road.
How in the world did Tennessee land the noon spot against Florida on Saturday?
Well, it was noon or 2 as of a couple weeks ago, and at some point they designated it for the noon game, which is unfortunate for Theo Ramey's 7-year-old Blue Jays who played 11 a.m. Absentee dad's going to be at Florida, at Thompson Bowling Arena, at Food City Center, whatever the name of it is.
I'm filling in. I'm going.
Yeah, I'll cover the first half. You come and cover the second half after the Blue Jays finish up.
No. I'm saying I'm filling in for Grant. I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be Theo's dad.
You'll be like Peyton Manning throwing that football at some guy in that Saturday Night Live skit, dude.
It's basketball, Hubs.
Same difference. You'll be.
Hey, you can throw a basketball at a kid's head just like you can a football.
You'll be hurling something at somebody.
Austin Price was teed up and thrown out of a Maryville Rec League game on Saturday.
Church League game, even worse.
Church League.
Have you been teed up yet?
I've not been teed up.
Have you thrown a water bottle yet?
I keep my distance. I did not Richard Dale Barnes spike a water bottle right on the bench and make him go clean it up with a bunch of towels and disrupt play. That was the most animated I've ever seen Rick.
Well, I mean, you had players helping clean up the spill too, which I thought was just so funny.
he kind of spiked it and then he turned around like, "Oh, did I just do that? Like, is that water everywhere because of me?"
That is as animated as you will see him. He was. I mean, he's obviously argues with officials, but you don't see that kind of display from him.
And then post game, extremely upbeat, positive. I love my team. This is what we're capable of. We just got to get better in certain areas. But as tough as that loss was, he was extremely upbeat afterward.
Well, and I mean, and you said it earlier. I mean, listen, if you want to be mad about a loss, be mad about Vanderbilt. If you're a Tennessee fan,
or Florida.
That's the one you gave away. Be mad that you didn't show up and compete against Florida. Don't be mad about that one. Now you can be mad at officiating and should they call a walk at the end? Yeah, I mean, was Felix fouled when he was called for a travel? And you could argue about all that. But in terms of that team's effort, don't be mad at that one. Be mad at the two other losses because they played really poorly at Vanderbilt and they just no-showed at Florida, which you just can't do.
Right. I mean, if you can go perfect at home and no lapses there, and you can
win
go
the
500
LSU
on the
game,
road.
if you're talking about, yeah.
If you can go 500 on the road, you're a 5-6 loss team on selection, or actually going into the SEC tournament. So maybe 7 losses at most going in the NCAA tournament. In the SEC, if you have 7 losses, you are probably a number 3 seed or higher, because that's what this league is. It's crazy.
A lot going on right now. Plenty of Tennessee basketball action. Of course, Grant and Rob will have you covered tonight against Kentucky at Thompson Bowling Green at the Food City Center. Plenty of recruiting stories, notes on the Journal's Quarters from the second junior day this past weekend. I know Matt, AP, and Brent did a good job of getting a bunch of stories out there. And, of course, baseball season's coming up. Less than a little over 2 weeks away. We got preseason contents, all that and more at Volquest.com. A lot going on right now, and if you're just watching us on YouTube, we thank you, but just the tip of the iceberg. So much more going on right now. Come join our family on the Journal's Quarters and at Volquest.com. Be sure to like and subscribe this video if you're watching on YouTube so we can get in front of more and more Tennessee fans. A big thank you, as always, to our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions for being the proud sponsor of the show. 865-524-5888. Online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Local and trusted since 1999. That is Exterior Home Solutions. For Grant Ramey, Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, I am Eric Kane. Appreciate you joining us here on the Tuesday morning Volquest podcast.